Hi, I'm Brian Moran, founder of Government CIO. Welcome to Government CIO Magazine.
Hello, Bill Giandoni here from Government CIO Magazine. Today we're sitting down with the Deputy CIO of NASA, Ms. Deborah Diaz.
Well, I think right now with the infrastructure and the 25-point plan, that's something that everybody's been discussing for years now. So what is really the next future state? It's really not a question of where, but it's how at this point. Whether it's mobile applications, it's how are people doing their work right now? How do they collaborate? Everybody's using social media. It was actually driven more from a consumer basis and what people were using in their home. I remember, using Facebook years ago, and it wasn't driven by the IT community. It was driven by a humanitarian project I was doing in the Philippines where we were trying to share photos. You were doing that on Facebook years and years ago. So it was really the consumerism that drove a lot of the business utilization of these products and services right now. And so, whether it is a meeting that's taking place at a local Starbucks, or whether it's, doing Skype from an airport so that you can log in anytime, anywhere, it's actually having the mediums. Years ago I'd walk around almost with a tool belt, having, the iPad, the iPhone, the BlackBerry, the computer. It's really taking that one device and being able to use all the different mediums. If you look what happened in Washington this week with the earthquake, it was interesting to me watching people out on the street and, how people were pulling out all their different devices. And what was the issue? It was communicating. It was being able to have that network availability. You look at what are the stoppers in utilizing the instruments. It's not going to be the instrument that's the limitation. It's not going to be the technology. It's going to be some of the hard drivers like bandwidth or cell towers or certain coverages in different aspects. So as a thought leader, what I try to do is to look beyond an instance, look beyond a traditional work day. You have to look at where the future is going to be 5 to 10 years out. If you go to the Disneylands of the world, that's what they're doing. I go to a lot of vendor sites, and we try to do futuristic modeling and simulation. How are people going to be interacting differently? How are they going to share that information? What can they do with that information? A lot of the visual analytics that we used 10 years ago for Homeland security purposes and some of the other security purposes, we can apply those in consumer space, whether it's for space travel and looking at earth science data that can be applicable to the United States or the world. You have to think about different ways of using data, using your tools, using the interaction between people. You look at the IT Summit, we had crowdsourcing there. You look at the earthquake, there was crowdsourcing. So there's all different techniques that didn't exist 3 to 5 years ago, but now you can't live without it in your everyday life. Again, I've been doing training for years in many different aspects, and what people need to understand is that training happens not just in sitting in a classroom, but also there are very, audio learners, there are visual learners. You have to offer it up in numerous different ways. If you look at your product sets, NASA's a big advocate of iPads right now. iPads don't come with a binder and a manual. You have to get your training online. A lot of the stuff that you do, it's simply by discussion. If you have someone, a colleague with an iPad, I frequently overhear people saying, well, what's your favorite app? And so, you learn by doing, much more so today than in the past. And so you may have training that was done in the traditional sense, and certain parts of your population, that might be the only thing that they're comfortable with. And I think it's the flexibility in the types of training, being able to give individuals and your stakeholders what they need. And again, it's not a one-time thing. I see so often you'll go to a class, to do your latest release of a software. One time usually isn't going to cut it. So you may need a one-page cheat sheet to go back to. But again, it's that repetition and being able to actually have a use case that I've found that it's much more purposeful to the purpose of keeping that knowledge base going. And then I think a lot of what we're talking about with training is as the workforce not only changes how they absorb the training, it's actually how do you take the resident knowledge, that knowledge management, the database, and institute that in a fashion where it can then be a repeatable process that could then be either better served up to others or better served up to an agency. If our Johnson Space Center has found that a particular type of training on a particular application has been very successful with 90% of the people taking that particular course or that particular online training and have very good satisfactory rating on it, you'd want to take that same training and then just maybe adapt it to a different center, but don't go back and repeat it from scratch. Take those lessons learned and be able to apply them. Well, when you're talking like NASA, where you have a $1.8 billion budget, you are going to have significant cost savings that you have to identify. And you're going to have to look across your portfolio. You can't just isolate things and leave them alone. And even with any prudent capital planning, you're going to want to understand all the different things that you're spending your money on. So yes, I think that IT security, there will be a cost savings on that, and trying to look for efficiencies, and it just might be put towards other activities. If you look at the past trending in security, for years we were spending money on CNA. You now have a continuous monitoring, you have a lot of the incident management that you have to really revitalize your program. The cyber threat portfolio that we have right now, that is as well as changing. And so you want to make certain that you have state-of-the-art, not only tools and processes in place, very good real-time automation of what you're doing, and real-time leveraging of lessons from other individuals, and sharing the lessons from other agencies. And that will save you money in the long run, because having to be proactive gives you a lot more money rather than being reactive. I think right now for NASA as a whole, we're finishing up the implementation for FY12 of I3P. It's a huge transition. Some of the earlier projects, when we had our NISN activity, it was just covering our wide area networks. Under our new NICS activity, that's going to cover wide area networks, local area networks. It's a whole transformation of how we do our network architecture, and so that's huge across the kind of footprint that NASA has, and particularly some of the different types of engineering and scientific applications that are utilizing these networks. For a lot of the other aspects for 12, we will as well look for areas of consolidation and efficiencies. We will try to do appropriate mapping with our centers, and again, that leveraging that I had previously talked about. In 13, you'll have a number of other initiatives that are going to be coming down the pike, like e-travel and some of the business systems that have to be completely revitalized. So whether that's working with our other federal colleagues on authentication type issues, or whether it's PKI or some of the other things that all of the federal agencies are struggling with right now. We have things internally with our agency that we're going to transform and revitalize, as well as what we're going to be doing with our other federal partners and in the international world right now. We're putting together some very innovative things right now, like using crowdsourcing or using things like random hacks of kindness, what we've done in the past. We're going to be putting together events like that where you have the best and brightest around the world putting their minds towards space initiatives using social media to do that. So there's all different tools and techniques that we can use in 12 and 13 to apply real-life solutions to the problems that NASA is going to be encountering, not just within our agency, not just within our center, but worldwide.